So let's not use, I've lived abroad in London for 5 years and I've done my thing, they're doing their thing, as evidence or as something to inform how connected I feel towards my friends back home or not. So meaning creating connection, what we really want is we want to feel the emotion of connection. And we can create the emotion of connection by our thinking. That is the only way that we can create emotional experiences in our body. Feelings are always created by our thoughts, not by circumstances.
Welcome to International Love Story, the podcast about intercultural relationships. My name is Christina, and in today's episode, I would like to welcome Sarah. Sarah is living in the UK at the moment. She's originally from Germany. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being my guest today. We do have a very interesting topic, which is going to be friendships abroad, making new friends. But before we do deep dives, I would love to know more about you, Sarah. So just going to ahead and introduce yourself. Who are you? What are you doing? Tell us all about you.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Yes, I'm Sarah. I'm from Hamburg in Germany, and I moved to London in 2019. So I'm here for 5 years now. And what I do is I am a friendship coach for Expat. So I am helping people who live abroad to form meaningful and long-lasting friendships and connections, to ultimately end their loneliness and social isolation, and to live a happier, longer, more fulfilled life abroad and be able to really enjoy their ex journey. And so when I moved in 2019, well, a couple of months before, I met my now fiance here in London. I was here to visit a friend and we met online on Tinder. And we spent a week together, and it was just amazing spending time with him. And we just got on so incredibly well that I, 3 months in, decided, okay, I'm just going to move to London and we're just going to see how it goes. And so I did in January 2019. So after knowing him for a couple of months, decided, okay, I didn't quite quit my job and didn't quite move out of my apartment. I kind of left it open a bit just in case. Because obviously, I knew him. I saw him a couple of times, but we've never really, spent time with each other for a longer period of time than a week or two. So it was all a bit of a crazy decision for me to think about it now. So I said, okay, I'm just going to give it a go. I'm just going to see how it turns out. And so I wanted to stay for 8 months originally and just see how it goes. But it did obviously turn out well. Found a job here, found a flat here with my now fiance. We just got on really well. And so after those 8 months, I decided that I'm going to stay here. And one of the things that I really, really struggled with in the beginning when I moved here was to make friends. And the whole concept of, starting from scratch, but moving somewhere new. I didn't know anyone here. So my friend who I visited here before moved back to Germany by, I think, a couple of months in after me moving here. So once she left, it was just my fiance who I knew, quote unquote, and even him I didn't really know very long. So it was really difficult for me to make friends, to meet people even. I had a lot of doubts about myself. My confidence wasn't as high as it is now. And I just felt different. And I just felt like I couldn't find people who I get on with, who are like-minded, who want the same thing. And obviously, kind of fast forward, I overcome all of these issues. I've got coached on that. I've learned loads of coaching skills, techniques. My background is in supporting people in loads of different kind of aspects for the last 10 plus years. But that was the time I really learned about coaching. And it was really, really helpful for me overcome all of these barriers, build amazing friendships. And this is why, in a nutshell, I'm supporting people now who moved abroad who might have difficulties in the same areas or similar areas.
Did it affect your relationship, and how did it affect your relationship to just know your partner and be with him? I remember when I moved to Miami in 2017 that I felt like I'm super annoying. I felt like a burden as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you say that, because I had very similar experiences back then when I didn't know anyone. I was just walking on the road, passing people, and I was thinking, I don't know anyone. Like, and not just those people that are passing the road, but like literally no one. And it was it was very isolating, but it was also quite an overwhelming feeling to think, I'm completely on my own here in this country. I have no one, I don't know anyone. In terms of my relationship, what the impact was is that obviously my boyfriend, my fiance, he is from this area now, here where we're living now. So he has always lived here. He's grown up here. So he has a massive supportive network, friendships, all of the things. And I have to say they were incredibly helpful in the beginning, were very open to take me on. But obviously they were never my friends. They were my partner's friends. So there was a bit of, it's just a boundary. Like, again, to make a note on this was something I told myself a lot in the beginning as well, which really blocked me from actually creating connections with these people. I told myself, stories about, well, they're not my friends and they aren't interested in me, even though they might have been. To go back to the impact, so he had friends. He saw his friends every now and again by himself for like a lads night, and that had such a massive impact on me because I felt incredibly lonely. I felt like this is all very unfair. Why does he get to see his friends and I don't have anyone here, and I'm here because of him, and why do I not get to see my friends? And, really this whole unfair thing, this isn't like right, I deserve something better, but I'm not actually doing anything for it to become better. So that was going on for me. In terms of a burden, I understand what you mean. I don't think I've felt it as much. Just one more thing to add to this. Obviously, one person can't fulfill all of the relationship needs that you have, right? In terms of one person can't be your boyfriend, like your romantic partner, your best friend, your, I don't know, advisor, it can't just be one person. So if it is only one person, I understand that can feel like, oh, we're maybe a burden for that person, or we take up too much space. And it isn't healthy. Like, it isn't healthy to just have that one person.
And what exactly did you do to get out there? Because you were just telling that once you walked on the street and you were like, you didn't feel like, at least this is what I understood, like you're fitting in there right now at that very moment.
Yeah.
But you've changed that. And how did it change? What did you do exactly to get yourself out there, to make connections, and also to make deep connections eventually?
So I think the first thing that I changed was to actually shift my mindset and believe that other people might be interested in me. So I always felt like a bit of a victim. There's poor me sitting in England. I have no one, and no one's interested in me, and no one's reaching out, or no one wants to meet me. No one's interested in being a friend of mine. And when I shifted that and actually thought, well, first of all, I'm not actually doing anything for people to meet me. Like, I'm just sitting here on my couch feeling sorry about myself, but I'm not actually making or creating any opportunities for people to connect with me. So once I understood that it has to come from me, like I have to take action, meaning I have to either go outside and actually meet people in person, or I can obviously do that online as well. So there are loads of opportunities to connect with people online. There are friendship apps, there are forums, there are things, social media, Instagram, Facebook groups. So you don't have to physically actually leave your house necessarily meet people, but you have to make yourself available. And that could be in person or online for other people to find you and actually connect with you. But in order to do that, you have to believe that there are people out there who want to actually connect with you. And I think that was the first step. Like when I was walking on the streets, I felt like that because I didn't believe that anyone would actually be willing to be interested in me. So it felt so anonymous and overwhelming because I blocked myself from any sort of connection because I didn't believe that anyone would be interested in a connection with me. So that is the first step, to really realize there is a possibility that people want to connect with me. I can increase the chances of people wanting to connect with me by being available either in person or, online. And in terms of like-minded people that you feel like you belong, one thing I really got good at is also finding out who am I looking for? So it might have been that the people that I have met might have just been quote unquote the wrong people for me. So I met, on friendship apps, for example, it's basically like dating profiles. I don't know, have you ever used like friendship apps?
I've used Bumble, for example, when we moved to the north of Germany, because another topic, I don't know if you feel the same, but I'm 32 now, and it's getting very difficult as older you get to make friends. And maybe it's because you are somehow, what you're looking for, like who you want to surround yourself with. So you get a little bit picky as well. But it's sometimes it feels like it's an impossible task. But then, yes, when moving to the north of Germany, back to Oldenburg, I used Bumble, and it felt like dating.
Yeah.
Like dating.
How was it for you when you like met up with people from the app? Like, was it, because you said it felt like dating, and it felt like dating to me as well. Like, how was that?
So it was exciting as well, when you're away and you feel like how your fingers are getting sweaty and you're like, oh, will she like me? So I met up with a woman. What am I supposed to say? Once you get there and you start a conversation and you have the chance to do even a deep dive, all the university basically falls from your shoulders. But in the beginning, it's quite weird. And actually, in my experience, so I used Facebook, for example, when living in Argentina for only 3 months. And there I made very good experiences because the people I met, they were from Argentina, from the US, and they were and here making German friends, I feel like it's another layer, because obviously every culture is different and that's also what I would be interested in, is like, how is it to make friends in the UK? But it was difficult for me in the beginning to really connect with those people I met, because we Germans, and this is a cliche in my opinion, that's absolutely right, we tend to close down first, and then eventually after a month, slowly we are opening up. And this is also what I felt when dating on Bumble. I just call it friendship dating now, I think, that it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to eventually get there. And it's nothing you will achieve within just, I don't know, let's have a coffee and sit down for 2 hours. It takes much, much longer to have this deep connection. And it really also depends on the background of the person as well. And as well on your age. And there are like different factors playing into it and to making friends.
It does require time and effort, and it is something that comes up for me a lot. What I see a lot of people really struggling with is, and I think this is a whole society, like world problem. We're so used to instant gratification in terms of, oh, I'm hungry. Oh, okay, I'm just going to order some food in and it's going to be at my door in 30 minutes. And, there are so many things that we can get so quickly that on so many different levels, I feel like, become less and less willing to effort and time and work into things. And unfortunately, friendship does take time and effort, and it does, require for us to, over a period of time, show up consistently with that person and open up. And like you said, it isn't just a 2-hour coffee date and all of a sudden we're best friends and I'm going to tell you the weirdest things of my past. Like, that's just not what happens, right? I mean, you can do, but you probably won't see that person again afterwards. But I just want to highlight that, and I just want to, set people up for the right expectation. It's not going to happen, and even not with my help, I won't be able to create a connection for you in a month. I can help you to set you up, to work on all the things, all the thoughts that you're having about constantly showing up, or all the thoughts you're having about opening up and being vulnerable, or about it taking time. But I won't be able to create it for you. And I just want everyone to know it does take time, and it's meant to take time. It's meant to take time for us to trust someone. And it's meant to take time for us to build a connection where I think, wow, Christina, like, you really get me. You've been on my side for a while, and you've learned or got to know me, know who I am, and you know how I think, and that you can't just create that. I just want everyone to know that, because I hear that people are so frustrated about it, and I understand it, but at the same time, you've misunderstood friendship. Like, you've misunderstood the concept of it, the concept of building it, the concept of having it. You don't even necessarily want it to go fast, because the process of getting to know someone, and like you said, it's so similar to dating, you know, the process of getting to know someone and feeling like every time I see that person, I'm more comfortable with that person, or that person shared another detail about their life with me. Like, this is amazing. Like, the whole process of building that connection is so valuable. I wouldn't want to give up on it, but I understand that people are, you know, impatient. I'm a very impatient person myself, and we just want things to go fast and efficient, and let's just get on with it. But that's not how it works.
Especially if you want to feel comfortable where you're at. I'm wondering, how is it to make friends in the UK? Do you feel a difference to Germany?
People in England, and all of these things I'm going to share are just my experiences, right? So other people might have different experiences, but in my experience, people are very, very friendly in the UK. So you can go anywhere and you greet someone, and they are, not everyone obviously, but I would say, I don't know, 70% of people are quite willing to have a small chat with you. And then you would exchange numbers, and you'd say like, oh yeah, let's meet up for coffee, or, you know, we should definitely see each other again. Sentences like this that I would interpret more into as a German person, that weren't actually as meaningfully loaded as I interpreted them to be. So there was a lot of disappointment for me, for sure. How was it for you, like in Miami? Because I hear lots about kind of US and how people are there, and how it works in terms of friendship.
So for me, as I've mentioned back in 2017 when moving to Miami, it was actually quite difficult for me in the beginning to make friends, because I've made the same experience as you did in the UK. You know, there's cliche of Americans to be quite open-minded, but when it comes for them to show their real personality, to show who they really are, they completely shut down. And that's actually also the experience I've made, because I would try and follow up and ask like, hey, do you have time to hang out? And the response I would get is like, yes, of course, I had a great time the last time. When do we have time? Blah, blah. But then I would never get a date or a time. And then it would be basically end in nothing. And that was very, very frustrating for me in the beginning, until I came to the realization that it's not my fault. I came to the realization that it's a culture difference, that basically is something I have to get used to. And I also realized that there are actually people out, but you have to find them. That's the thing. The experience, on the other hand, I've made in Argentina is a completely different one. It's because Argentinians, they are in general, they're quite open. They love to talk. They love to talk about their families, about themselves. It's very easy to have communication with them. And you definitely also know that they will follow up with you. It's very easy to make friends there. And it's also easy to make long-lasting friendships. And they make it very, very easy to feel comfortable there.
That's amazing. I love that. I love how, you know, how it's so different everywhere. And when you just were talking about the differences, I think kind of what stood out for me is just realizing that what we think, because it all comes back to us, right? And what is normal to us. So they believe that, you know, they might question themselves. They might question, like, is there something wrong with me? And I did that in the beginning before I knew and was sort of into that, before I had the same self-awareness as I do now, and before I learned all about it, I was questioning myself, and I was thinking, is there something wrong with me? Maybe I'm too much. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I'm not, like, I'm too much of an introvert. Maybe I'm too boring. Maybe, you know, the way I speak is weird. Like, I really questioned myself. And then obviously at some point I as well realized, well, but that wasn't because kind of it happened so often that I came to the realization. It's more, I've learned about it and then realized, okay, that isn't because of me. I just want to highlight, it is because of what we think is normal, what our expectations are. So if you do live in a country where there's a mismatch between what you consider as normal or what you would expect from other people to do or for them to behave in a certain way, and they don't feel that, then just notice that it is because of your expectation and that there is a mismatch that is creating that frustration or the negative emotion that you're experiencing. There is no right or wrong way of doing it. I mean, obviously, it's easier for people, like you described in Argentina, if people follow up, if people text each other, if they're reciprocating your efforts. Obviously, if we think about the goal being building a connection, then that behavior is more helpful to achieve that goal. But it doesn't mean that this is right or wrong. It requires a certain amount of self-awareness for us, I think, to be able to deal with these issues, and a certain level of understanding and acceptance, I think, as well. We're not going to change a nation. If, that is the culture of the country, then we have to understand it, accept it, and find the people, like you said as well, who might be different or who might give me what I need. But just be mindful that it's you needing something, and that isn't a whole negative thing. It's just you coming there with your personality, expectations, and you are not them not being fulfilled, so you experience negative reaction to that.
And in case, so let's say I meet someone, I feel like, okay, that could be a friendship that's going to develop here. We have a lot in common. We have great conversation. And then eventually, and that happens, I mean, it happens in any relationship, obviously, but after a couple of months, you feel like it's not somehow fulfilling me, and it's not what I'm looking for in a friendship anymore. Is there anything you can advise, like, on how to deal with that?
I would, like you said, first of all, understand and accept that friendships change, right? So nothing has gone wrong. If that is your experience, it's easy to think like, oh, that it's a bad thing, but nothing has gone wrong. It's just the nature of life, of us developing, them developing. So that's what you just said, basically. So that is the first thing, to really not make it a big negative thing that we now have to find a solution for and we have to talk about it. You can talk about it. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but maybe it's just seeing it and just letting it be there, letting the change of connection or friendship just be there and exist, and we don't have to fix it. We don't have to solve for it. It might just be what it is. So that can be one approach. Another approach could be it depends how you feel about it, maybe how close you are with that person, but what you can do as well. So maybe I would do that with my best friend is, for example, actually mentioning it and actually say, look, I know I've moved abroad. I know I had kind of my life going on. I know that you have your life, and I see that there are not as many parallels anymore as there maybe used to be. And I feel like we're a little bit distant. I feel a bit distant from you. I don't really know what's going on with you anymore. I feel like maybe my priorities have changed and yours have changed. Our interests have changed. What can we do about it? And actually have a conversation with that friend about what can we do about it? So it can be like, okay, so let's have some more opportunities for us to connect. So can we, set up a regular time where you connect with the other person, or find something that you can do together that brings you together? Because I have experienced that in my life since I live in London now, I definitely have lost kind of touch points, if that makes sense, like similarities or things we have in common with my friends who are still back home, just because I have developed into sort of my direction of my life and they have in theirs. And because if you don't see each other as regularly because you live in two different countries or even two different cities, it's very natural that you do lose a bit of connection. So what we can do is to consciously create that connection and bring it up as a topic, find a solution together. So maybe let's have a movie night and we, video call each other and we find a film and we press play at the same time and we watch it together, and then we have a chat about the film afterwards. There are so many different ways that you can do that. So that is another way. And the third way that applies to this situation, but also to kind of the situation we talked about before of meeting people and feeling like there isn't really a sense of connection, or having friends and we might have lost a bit of connection. What I do with my clients is I always empower them to be in a position where they take charge and control over life and over their emotional well-being, over their experience of life. And so what I mean by that is, let's not use external circumstances to influence how connected we feel to someone or not. So let's not use, I've lived abroad in London for 5 years and I've done my thing, they're doing their thing, as evidence or as something to inform how connected I feel towards my friends back home or not. So meaning creating connection, what we really want is we want to feel the emotion of connection. And we can create the emotion of connection by our thinking. That is the only way that we can create emotional experiences in our body. Feelings are always created by our thoughts, not by circumstances. So even though I live in London for 5 years and I'm doing my thing and they're doing their thing, I can still choose to think thoughts about them and the relationship I have with them that creates connection. So for example, I've been through so much with them. They really get me. Like, I can always count on them. They're always there for me. They know who I am, what I stand for, what my values are. They deeply understand me. Even though we're not hanging out every Friday night, I can still choose to believe these thoughts and I can still get what I want out of the connection. So that's the third approach I would really recommend for you, to start taking what you want and not asking circumstances or other people to give it to you. So don't wait for anything else to give you what you want, take it. And if you don't know how, then I'm always here to help. You can always message me on Instagram and, I'll give you some tips. But it just puts you in such an empowered place where you don't have to rely on anyone else to experience something that you want. I hope that makes sense.
It definitely makes sense. I mean, a lot of those things you've just shared, I see myself in, to be honest, especially if, there are days constantly changing in your life and you constantly have to adapt to new circumstances. As you've just mentioned, not to take all this as an excuse, like, oh, I don't have time because there's this and that going on, but to sit down, to ask how they're doing, send them a message like, hey, when do we have time for a video call, and to be a little bit more proactive in case of expecting them to remember that you're still there on the other end of the world, maybe another time zone, because this is how, in my experience, it usually starts, where the path you've walked for so many years eventually might just lead in different directions. And thinking back, no one can really say, like, when did it really happen? Because there are like several circumstances that are coming together that are creating that situation, and you'll never be able to put the pieces together in order to figure out, where did we take the wrong path, for example. Again, out of my experience, and as mentioned, it's not only when moving abroad, it's also when living in another city. And in general, this is how relationships are working. But what I would be interested in, one sentence that back then, years ago, that was thrown into my face and I didn't know how to respond to that, was, okay, Tina, you have changed. So for me, that's in retrospective, that's not negative at all. But back then, it was quite negative. So I completely got it the wrong way and I didn't know how to handle that. And that's actually something nowadays I would handle it a little bit differently, to be honest. But if someone tells you just like that, somehow out of nowhere, this is at least how it felt like for me, you've changed, what is your response to that?
I would say or suggest for someone who might experience that is, how do you think about that? What does that mean to you? What do you make it mean if someone tells you you've changed? Because it can be like, yes, I know, I've lost K, like I have changed, or it can be, what do you mean I've changed? Am I worse? Am I better? Like very insecure, questioning yourself. So I would really check in, like, how do you interpret that sentence, these words? What do you interpret them as? And that will tell you if you feel a bit, like a punch in your stomach when you hear that sentence, then it probably is because you're making it mean something negative. So check in with yourself. What do you make it mean? And what do you say? I mean, I guess there is no right or wrong answer to respond to that. I think I would, again, encourage you find out how you are currently thinking about it, what you make it mean, and then think about how do you want to respond to that? What is something that feels good to you? So if it feels good to you, you can say like, oh, that's interesting that you say that. What do you mean by that? You know, how have I changed? Or you can say, oh, no, like I've really noticed how I've changed. I'm really happy about it. Or you can say, oh, you know, how come you think I've changed? I don't really feel like I've changed. Like, what have you seen that I might not be aware of? So I think coming from a place of curiosity and again, understanding probably, or being just curious to find out why they said it and what it means to them, and being able to self-reflect if you want to think, oh, Christina thinks I've changed because I am not responding to messages as much anymore. Okay, so is that true? Am I not responding as much anymore? Why am I not responding? And so you can take it on and reflect to yourself and use it as feedback if you want to. And then you can go back to the person and say, look, actually, I have realized, like I've thought about it and I realized I'm not responding as much. And I think that is because I've taken on a second job and I'm just actually really struggling to manage all of the responsibilities that I have. Like, would you be okay to give me a bit of time? It's not that I don't want to speak to you, but it's just I need a bit of time. Or, you know, well, it's just made up right now. But I would check in, what do you make it mean when you hear that and you have a negative emotional reaction? Find out what is going on for you there, and then think about how do I want to actually take it on and respond to it. Maybe take some time in between hearing the sentence and responding, and you get to decide. There is no right or wrong. You get to decide what you want to do with that sentence.
And that's a great advice, actually.
What did you do in the beginning, and how do you feel about it now?
I basically let it sit for a couple of days, to be honest, because I was like, okay, I have other things to take care of. So I have a moving to plan. We have to figure out, are we going to go back to Germany? Are we going to move to Argentina? Where will we end up? So I can't deal with that right now. And I made the mistake, to be honest, that I've never followed up with that question again. But I could have taken control over, at least over that in that very moment. And I didn't. And that's something, you know, life happens, things are happening. But if I would have known back then what I know nowadays, I would definitely handle the situation in a completely different way. First of all, calming down a little bit, sleeping over it for a couple of days, and letting the other person know, like, hey, okay, I understand. Thank you for letting me know. I will get back to you, and also getting back to the hours. And I didn't do that because I was just like, what do you mean? I even took it as an insult at that very moment. I was I don't want to deal with that right now. So I just let it pass, leave me alone, and I'm going to deal with my own situation at the moment.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that is so valuable for everyone who's listening as well, because there will always be things that we, you know, mistakes that we do, or not even mistakes, right? That is a judgment already, but like things that we would do differently in the future. And I think one way that I like to look at them is I might have done this. I would do it differently now. But the good thing is, like, there's no upside of me, you know, shaming myself for it or beating myself up for having done that in the past. It can be useful as far as we learn from it. Like, because it would be different if you would say, well, I've done that, but whatever, I'm not even going to think about it anymore. But you've learned from it, you know, and you said, now, I would do that differently now, or would have done it differently then if I would have known what I know now. So you've learned from something that you have done. And I think that is one approach that we can all take in terms of thinking about things that we might have not appreciated us doing that are in the past. Whenever we argue with the past, we will always lose. Like, we can't change the past, right? We just can't change it. What we can do, though, is take control of our present moment, not letting the past to our present moment up in terms of, you know, overthinking about it, regretting it, feeling shameful about it, or whatever you're experiencing, and just learning from it and then letting that inform your future, as opposed to like letting it consume your present. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that is really valuable for all of us to kind of remember that we can always learn from things. And one other thing that came to mind when you said that was that is the perfect example of how our brain, operates and does things, right? So you were in this mindset of like, the world is falling apart, it's crumbling, I don't have any control over my life. And then something that hasn't got anything to do with that, right? Like just a couple of words. We don't know what the intention of those words were, but your brain, and like my brain does that all the time, everyone's brain, right? Our brain just interprets something to make it fit as evidence to prove our belief, right? That our world is crumbling apart and that we have no control over it. And then these words, see, I've changed now. So even that, like, did, and you just like, it just adds to the pile of this isn't going well. There's another thing that isn't going well. So it's so interesting how our brain works sometimes. It's so silly sometimes as well. And it's so unhelpful.
It's true. So I do think that it is very important to have this conversation right now. This is also why I do share a bit out of my own experience, because it is important to me not to do better, but to handle it differently in the future, and having you as an expert as well, having several insights on this topic. So you see a pattern and you know exactly how to turn it around and how to handle it. And what I love as well is that the one sentence you've said, and you've mentioned it a couple of minutes ago, is that you can take over control. Though you are in control and you have to be aware of it and you have to take control. And that's if you say it like that, it's such a little thing. But if you really switch your mindset into that direction, it changes a lot. I would even say it changes your whole life if you want to. And what I would be interested in as well, to slowly come to an end as well, where are you nowadays with your friendships in the UK at the moment? How do you?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So I am very happy with my connections, with my friendships. So there have been quite a few changes in my personal and professional life, lots of changes in my kind of how I spent my time. So obviously I've spent a lot of time in my career, which has an impact on the amount of time that I have been able to invest in meeting new people. I do have a network of amazing people and friends that are very supportive, that I love, that I feel very connected to. I just it doesn't really go into kind of with the question that you've just asked, but I want to just open up for everyone to really, like you said, take control of your life, over your friendships, over everything. The way that I feel towards my friends isn't because they are showing up in a specific way. Of course, they do show up in the way that I appreciate people to show up. That's why they're my friends. But they don't have to text me every day or, call me every day or every other day. They don't have to meet me. They can even, some of my friends, like we have that mutual agreement that we just respond when we can and when we've got the headspace for it. So I feel so connected to my friends, and that isn't because they show up in a different way or they fulfill my expectations. That's just because I choose thoughts. And I just want to open that up to all of you guys listening, because I am so happy with my friendships, and it is because I've found amazing people, but it is also because I've worked so much on myself and how I experience my friendships and how I think about them and how I feel towards or treated by my friends or valued by my friends. And that all comes down to my work, and that is all accessible to you. So if you think I'm not actually quite happy with my friendships, I do have people in my life, but I don't really feel very connected to them, or they don't really get me, I would really encourage you to work on yourself first before you go out and try to meet new people and make new friends, because that's one thing I see a lot as well. It's like, I'm not happy with what I have. It's that throwaway society, right? Like, I'm not happy with what I have, so I have to go out and consume and meet new people. But then at the same time, they aren't willing to put the work in. So they're just in this like vicious cycle of trying to do something about it, giving up because it doesn't work out, being unsatisfied, trying to do something about it, and then giving up. And instead of like leave all of that out, see who have you got in your network now? How can you create more connection towards these people who you already have in your network and build that up as opposed to going through all of that work of finding like-minded people, going out, investing time and going to groups and activities. That is much more efficient. And, I'm German, I love to be efficient, like just increase the connection you have with the people who you have around you already. So long story short, I'm really happy with my friendships. One of the goals that I have set for myself this year is to meet new people. And what I meant by my time, like the shifts in my time and availability, that means that I will be able to spend more time actually investing in meeting new people. And that is one thing that I will try and capture my people, my followers, and people who follow me on Instagram, my socials, because I think it is very valuable to see other people going through the same stuff. And I will go through some failed dates and some rejection and, some whatever, all of the things, because that's normal, when we meet people. But I am very excited to be able to share how I would handle it. Not that it's the right way of handling it, but it might help some other people who might not have, the same experiences that I have or the same knowledge that I have. So I hope that it will inspire some people and help some people. That's a little bit long answer to your question.
But it's the perfect answer, in my opinion. What is the best way to follow up and also to check out your services? Where can people find you?
So I mostly hang out on Instagram, which is friendships.abroad, and you will have access to my website and everything from there. The link in my bio that you can check out my website. Otherwise, if you don't have Instagram, it's friendshipsabroad.net, and that should give you all the information that you need. Please do reach out. Like, I'm really, really happy. I'm so keen on helping people to make friends and end their loneliness, because I really, really struggled with it. And I know that loads of people do. And loneliness is so, so bad for us, like physically, emotionally, mentally. And I really don't want you to, suffer from that and get all of the negative impacts that loneliness can have on you. So please reach out if I can help you in any way. If you've got any questions from our chat today, I'm more than happy to help. And otherwise, thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And as always, I'm going to link everything in the side notes as well as in the YouTube description. So for everyone who wants to get in contact with Sarah and see what she's up to and how her journey is, definitely follow her on Instagram. I do as well, obviously. And thank you so much for your time and for all the valuable, amazing advice you've given us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening and or for watching to today's episode. If you like what I'm doing, please consider to rate this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. And with this being said, have a lovely morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are right now.